Alright fellas, so today, day 22 in Thailand. Time's coming to a close. It's funny, I've been trying to film this intro, but I keep on turning around to do approaches, so I'm just gonna take a second to actually film it now. But yeah, day 22. It's a beautiful sunny day. And yeah, I'm thinking of doing a session again. This will probably be my last session, or maybe I'll do one more on Thursday, but between Friday, Saturday and Sunday I'm just going to chill for a bit because I already have dates lined up, and I've got a friend who might be coming from London to visit, and then I've also got a few guys that I met out here who I want to hang out with a little bit more before I fly back to the old United Kingdom. So yeah, I want to make the most of today, basically do as many approaches as I can, and yeah, see what we can conjure up. Yeah, either way, I'm going to put this away now and actually try and get these approaches in. I'm going to set the timer to an hour and just absolutely spam and then get some food afterwards. And then also, quick update. So on the career front, obviously I told you guys that I was spending more time trying to lay out my career path for the next few months. And yeah, I had a conversation with a guy that I'd met out in China when I was traveling to Bangkok. And yeah, we've been talking for quite a few weeks now, going back and forth. He's into tech sales, which is ironic because Efrem was also into tech sales. And yeah, we just talked about the opportunities that he has with his business and his program. So yeah, I mean, I'm essentially going to join his program. So I'm going to be working, well, basically I'll go through his tech sales program, learn all the fundamentals, and then get the certification. And then once I've done that, hopefully land a tech sales job that allows me to be fully remote and allows me to travel. So yeah, things are looking positive on the career front. I'm glad that I was able to, get that somewhat sorted out. I mean, I still had time in terms of leeway when it comes to, figuring out that next phase. But yeah, I'm glad I've managed to get something fairly solidified here in Bangkok. So yeah, I guess that's one less thing to stress about. But either way, I was chilling, I was having a good time. I wanted to intentionally take a break from all the work and all the stuff that I was doing back at home because I was pretty fed up. I basically burnt out. So yeah, I'm just happy that things are moving along with the dating and with the career and just me personally. I just feel good. I'm pretty satisfied. I've been making a lot of progress with approach, the channel as well. Posting content's been fun as well. So yeah, life is good. Life is good. I can't complain. But anyway, I'm gonna put this away, head out. Until then, peace out. Alright boys, so just got my coffee. I want to give a quick update on how the latest approaches have gone because there were some quite interesting interactions that I think are worth talking about. So the first one I'll talk about was this two set. So yeah, two girls, group of friends, they're walking past me. I'm really into one of them, the other one is okay. So I do what I do. I turn around, get up front as quickly as possible, and then I give the compliment, and she's literally like shocked. This is one of those reactions where the girl can't believe that she's been given a compliment. And to be fair, she actually looked incredible, right? She looked really, really good. But she couldn't quite believe that I gave her that compliment, and she received it really well. She was thanking me, and then her friend was also quite bemused, as you can imagine. And yeah, we had a bit of a conversation. Turned out that she already had a boyfriend, so that stopped there. But her reaction was, again, a reminder that when this goes well, the girls love it. They love it, and therefore it's always nice to get that reaction, even if you don't necessarily get the quote unquote result that you want. And then the second one, so I approached this girl who ended up being from Kazakstan, and she was looking really good. She was looking very fancy, the kind of girl that I would have maybe previously counted myself out for, but I said, screw it, why not, let me go for it. And this was funny because even though she stopped and even though we had a conversation, I could tell that she wasn't that interested. And so there was a point in the conversation where basically I just let the silence sit, and we just stared at each other for like 4 seconds, and then she just excused herself. Oh, well, she was about to excuse herself, right? So she said, so we had the 4-second pause, and then she said, well, I want to go get a coffee now. And I said, okay, you can go get your coffee. You still look good. So when I said you can go get your coffee, but you still look good, and I basically gestured to her to go, it's almost as if she was confused and then she smiled after that, and I thought, that was a kind of odd reaction, right? Like, I think a part of her thought that I would just hang around and basically chew her ear off and continue to talk and continue to try and get the number or try to get some sort of contact detail. But obviously, once you've done this enough times and you realize that I don't have to go for every single detail, like every phone number, especially if the girl's clearly not interested, then, you know, I think that's, like, a part of me is thinking that that's rare. And I think just her reaction was maybe a sign that many guys just continue to push and might be a bit needy or try to hold her there, kind of hold her hostage in a sense. But nah, I'm like, mate, I'll just move on to the next one. Like, there's no point in me sticking around here, right? And so that happened, and then, you know, I was on my way to get my coffee, and then all of a sudden I see this absolutely beautiful Thai girl, and yeah, I do the approach. It was an interesting approach because I couldn't really get right in front of her because she was literally like on her way to the escalator, and it would have been a bit of an abrupt stop, so I kind of just went a bit diagonally just to give her some more room and not cut her off from going onto the escalator. But either way, I got her to stop. And this one was funny because I gave the compliment, and then once I gave it, she smiled, but she didn't say anything. And then I was wondering, okay, does she speak English that well? Like, what's going on here? And then as we spoke a bit more, I just called it out and I said, you seem a little bit confused and you don't seem interested. And I just said that, right? But I kind of said it with a smirk on my face to not make it too serious. And then at that point she kind of opened up and just went, oh no, I'm just surprised. I guess this never happens to me. And at that point I was like, oh, okay, so that's what that is, right? So again, I think that's a good example of how it's valuable if you can call out what the girl seems to be feeling, and not do it in a like, you don't seem interested, like, why aren't you giving me my attention? Like, nah, obviously don't do it in like an aggressive way. You know, you kind of want to do it in a way that's playful. And it just made the rest of the conversation way smoother, right? Now she was more open because I guess in that moment she realized, oh, this guy is actually able to like recognize that I'm still kind of trying to gauge what's going on here. And so that was a nice sort of moment. I guess you could call it like a turning point in the conversation. And then at that point, the tension between us was really, really high. Really, really high. I mean, we barely spoke. We maybe spoke for about maybe 4 or 5 minutes because she was on her way to the library to do some reading. I could just feel that vibe, that energy, that tension. And so yeah, I didn't set up a date because, well, yeah, I don't actually know why. I could have. I mean, I'm busy tonight. So by the way, I'm linking up with Kristian. So Kristian, the OG, Kristian Casanova, he reached out to me. So we're gonna hit the town, hit the city later this evening. So I can't go out tonight. And then Friday night, I'm pretty certain I'll have another third date with the half Thai, half Dutch girl. So that's obviously gonna happen on Friday or Saturday, and then I'm going back to London on Sunday. So yeah, for some reason I couldn't be bothered to like think about my upcoming calendar. But either way, she was the girl seemed pretty interested, so I should be able to set something up on text if she's still down to do something. But it was funny because she asked me before I left, she asked me, oh, like, are you just a tourist, or do you live in Thailand? And I was like, I basically told her the truth, which is I'm a tourist, but I plan on moving to Bangkok sometime early next year for the European winter, because I actually want to, come back here just to escape the cold and depressing January, February, and March in London. So once I get my remote sales job, then I can, make those plans, real. So yeah, I guess I just wanted to, so I basically said that. So I don't know if that was her trying to gauge if I'm just here to hit on her and try and get like a sort of short-term hookup or anything like that. But either way, I don't think it really matters. Ultimately, she vibed with me, I vibed with her, so we'll see where it goes. But anyway, I'm gonna put this away now because my right arm, holding this on my right arm is actually really weird. Like, I think I need to hit the gym. I think the guy that left that comment and said I need to hit the gym is right. Like, my right arm can barely hold this selfie stick, man. Like, I'm really struggling out here, but either way, I will drink my coffee now, and then I will, I'll sign out. But I'll probably do a few more approaches between now and, let's say, the next hour. So, but until then, I think I'm just gonna drink this coffee, try and find a nice quiet spot, read my book. I'm reading The Republic by Plato, so I'm getting into my ancient philosophy, so that should be quite interesting. But otherwise, I'll let you guys know what happens in a bit, but I'll just show you what I'm looking at. Actually, it's a pretty cool like spirally mall. They've got some Disney shit. It goes all the way up. Yeah, it's pretty cool. But yeah, anyway, I'll catch you boys in a bit, yeah? So take care.
I'm so tired of good health. I'm so tired of this roof in my bed. I'm so tired of cooked food and good moods, a good coupe with AC to cruise. So tired of myself, my word and my wealth. Too big is my heart, too small are my cares. Then she said, I'm so tired of making love, I'm so tired of being kissed. I'm so tired of making money, so tired of this cushion. My split, it don't make sense. I'm so tired of my family, my friends. I'm so tired of one night stands, so tired of living lavish. Two birds in one nest and being notorious. Even when you're gone, I can still feel you. I want it more than that.
Right, fellas, so this evening, the topic I want to talk about is self-belief. Now, I've rambled on time and time again about the idea of conviction and how important conviction is if you want your approaches to be successful. And I think another characteristic that's very closely tied to conviction is self-belief, right? So obviously self-belief is the idea that you are confident enough in yourself to believe that whatever value you have in your life, that permits you or that validates you enough to be successful in whatever choices you make. So, if I'm a footballer and I have enough self-belief, then whenever I step out onto the football pitch, I'm pretty confident that I can get a goal, right? I'm pretty confident that I can be of value to the team, right? I'm gonna move away because it's quite loud here, but yeah, if I'm a footballer, then I'm confident and I have enough self-belief that I can score a goal. If I'm a musician, then I have enough self-belief that when it comes to performing on the big stage, that I can, go through my entire set without any issues, right? And so the same applies to cold approach, right? So if I believe in myself enough, then at some level I feel like whenever I go up to the girl, I believe that she will like me. And that's not saying that every girl will like me, it's just that if we turn out to be compatible, then the girl will like me. And I believe that to be true before it's even been confirmed by reality, right? I like to kind of think of self-belief as a Jenga tower. So if any of you have played the game Jenga, right, with the Jenga blocks where you build up the tower, for somebody who might have low self-esteem, particularly when it applies to dating, I think our self-belief is kind of like a Jenga tower where, you build it up and it's a fairly steady structure at first. But then with every, let's say, brutal rejection or every unfavorable outcome, you're essentially taking a block, right? You're taking a block out of the structure. And now the entire Jenga tower becomes very loose and shaky. And so obviously it loses that stability, right? And so think of that stability as your baseline level of self-esteem and self-belief. And every time something happens where it either pierces that or breaks that, the tower becomes shaky. And then eventually, if it happens again and again, then the tower just falls, right? It just falls down and it crumbles. And I think it's interesting because if you think about like the analogy of like removing each block in the tower, I would say that for different people, removing the block has a different impact. So for somebody who's got high self-esteem, it's actually very difficult to shake that block down, because regardless of whether or not you remove each block, each piece, they still stand resilient, right? They could be like, when you're at the end of Jenga and you've literally got like a very thin bottom foundation of the block and it looks like it's gonna fall, but it doesn't. Like to me, that's the exact same. To me, that represents somebody who is so strong, so resolute in their self-belief that it takes a lot to really bring them down. Yeah, and on the opposite side of that, you've got somebody who, as soon as you remove one block or 2 blocks, the whole thing comes crashing down. Yeah, and it's interesting because I guess the next question is, well, how do you build self-belief? And the simple answer is, well, just put in more reps, right? More reps, more experiences, more action, more positive reference experiences, and then more belief. But I don't know if that's necessarily it's a simple answer, but I don't think it's the end all be all, because ultimately, if you think about it, you could be doing 1,000 reps and every single rep is a bad rep, meaning that it doesn't result in anything. And so I think part of self-belief, or at least building self-belief, it comes from having positive reference experiences that ultimately break down a self-limiting belief, right? Because self-belief is also contingent on self-limiting beliefs. So if you have a lot of self-limiting beliefs, then of course you're not going to be confident enough to go into any approach truly feeling as if you can get the results you want. And the crazy thing is that girls can really sense that. Yeah, they can sense it when you walk up with a lack of self-belief. But I guess on the other side, if you put in reps, then yeah, sure, over time you just build that muscle. But it's complicated because it very much depends on the results you're getting and whether or not you're iterating, right? Because at the end of the day, like when you're trying to build a skill, you need some level of positive reinforcement, meaning, like kind of like when you go to the gym, right? If you've been to the gym for a month or 2 months, then, you expect to see some level of progress. Sure, you might not see a massive amount of progress physically when it comes to like your physique, but at the very least, you should be seeing some improvements in how much weight you can lift, or maybe your form is a little bit better, right? And you're finding it easier to do the bench press or whatever, right? So maybe when you first start benching, for all my skinny guys out there, you're struggling to bench the bar, and then the week after that, benching the bar is a bit easier, and then you add on a few plates, and then that becomes easier, and you see this progression, right? But it's tough because with cold approach, it's not like going to the gym where the results are linear, right? So you might have a day or a week where your results are really bad, and then the next week it's good, and then the next week it's bad. So you can't judge your, let's say, progress on such a like minute level. You kind of have to draw it out and look at it from a wider perspective and say, okay, instead of looking at my progress every day, I take a look and say, okay, within the last 2 weeks of my approaches, how successful have they been, right? And so you sort of tally it up in that way. But ultimately, yeah, self-belief is you just have to build it brick by brick, block by block, just to bring it back to that Jenga tower analogy. But I also think, like I'm sure you've heard about this discussion of, do we act when we have self-belief, or do we wait to build it before we act? Like, does belief come before action, or does action come before belief? And it's probably a bit of both, right? It's probably a bit of both. But it's tough because we're all starting from different levels of self-belief. Some of us have very, very low self-belief as a result of whatever experiences you've had in the past, or whatever somebody has said to you, or maybe you compare yourself to others and that affects your self-belief. And so if you're starting from a very low base, then yeah, it could be quite difficult to bring yourself to a point where you have enough belief to go out there. But I don't think you need too much self-belief just to try. You know, like you should be able to try and put in a rep, even if you don't expect it to go anywhere. And so, but it's funny, right? Because I think one of the reasons why I wanted to bring this topic up is because, you know, obviously I had that great experience with the Finnish girl a few days ago, and that was a fairly transformational experience, purely because at some level I never believed, right, that I had what it took to get a girl like that to be that interested in me that quickly. And so, you know, for me, I went into that approach, to be fair, I went into that approach with belief, but could I confidently say that I went into that approach with full self-belief, meaning that I truly, genuinely believed that I could, like, you know, have that approach go successfully? I don't think that's true. I don't think that's the case, right? But I still went in anyway. And so I think that's an example where just because you don't necessarily have enough self-belief, it doesn't mean that you shouldn't take a chance, right? Because at some level, taking a chance is what builds the self-belief. Because in our heads, we won't believe it until we see it. But we'll only see it if we try it. But then it's this weird circle, because we'll only try it if we believe that we can do it. But that's the wrong way to look at it, right? Like, you kind of have to just go for it. Like, you know, you think about in the NFL, they have this this kind of play called the Hail Mary play. Now, I'm not like an expert in NFL, but I used to play a bit of Madden with my cousins in the US. And a Hail Mary play is essentially a play that you do at the end of the game, and you're just trying to get a crazy result, right? You basically like take a lob, you throw the ball, and you hope for the best, right? And it's a way to try and maybe win the game, or, you know, tie the game at the very last minute. Now, the chances of a Hail Mary play being pulled off are, you know, probably pretty low, right? It's a pretty difficult, let's say, move to accomplish. But people try it anyway because there's a possibility that it might actually work. And Kristian's always talked about this idea that you're only one approach away from everything changing. And I understood what he meant when he said it when I first heard it, but I think as of late I've really started to understand it, because what can happen is, you know, you can be a guy who cold approaches and you can find some success, and then you might plateau. And like people have said before, there's always something to be pissed off about, right? At first you're annoyed that you don't know how to approach, then you approach, and then the conversations are trash, and then you get over that, and then now you can't get the girl on a date, and now you're trying to then you get the girl on the date, but then you can't escalate, and then you escalate, but she won't come back. So there's always something to be annoyed about. But I guess the point is, you know, you could be somebody who approaches, but there's still some level of low self-belief, and you could go into so many approaches with that low self-belief, but at one point all it takes is one to completely shatter it, you know. And when you've shattered it, then every other approach after that changes, right? Now you go in with like a completely different mentality, and it's actually pretty insane how you wake up one day and it's a very different feeling to the day before. And so hopefully that's like enough motivation to suggest that just because you're not good enough now, or just because you don't feel good enough now, it doesn't mean that you can't go out there and like put some reps in, you know? It is like an iterative process, and you just have to trust in it, day by day, week by week, rep by rep. And then, you know, I would also say that, you know, for anybody out there who's obsessed with making progress, you know, I'm guilty of. It's quite loud. Okay, you know, for anybody out there who's obsessed with progress, I'm somebody who's quite guilty of consistently moving the goalposts. you know? So whenever I set myself a goal to get better at something, even if I achieve that goal or aim, I'm very quick to dismiss it and go, okay, yeah, that was good, but like, what's next, right? And I think that's a good mentality to have, because, you know, it keeps you on your toes, it keeps you pushing forward, you know, it makes sure that you don't stagnate and just stay in the same place and remain satisfied, because once you do that, then now you just become comfortable. But at the same time, you know, moving the goalposts that much it's not great, because you're always looking for the next thing without appreciating the progress you've made. And if you're not careful with that, then are you really actually building your self-belief? Because if you're making progress but you're not acknowledging it, then what happens is you don't really like strengthen that belief, right? Because you're so busy on like thinking about the next level, the next dragon to slay, which, like I said, is important to some degree, but I think it's actually equally important to like take a step back and go, okay, like, dude, I've made some progress, yeah? Sure, I'm not like at the pinnacle, I haven't reached the top of the mountain yet by any means, but if I look at myself 4 months ago, then I've made progress, right? And I think if you don't do that, or if you don't have somebody by your side to remind you that you've actually done well, then you might just burn out, man. Like, you might burn out. You might burn out, and that would be a really big shame, because if you've come that far, if you've made a decent amount of progress, then who's to say that you won't make more progress, right? Like I said, it isn't linear, so just because you made X amount of progress within like 2 or 3 months, that doesn't necessarily mean that you're gonna make the same amount of progress in the next 3 months, right? Because maybe the next hurdle is something that, you know, you're gonna struggle with more. So for example, in cold approach, okay, sure, well done, you've been able to approach, yeah, you've been able to get some reps in, and then let's say you've even been able to get dates. But then now let's say you go through a 2-month phase where the dates aren't going anywhere, yeah, and you're really frustrated because, well, you know, I put in all this work and, you know, I've made all these reps, but the dates aren't going anywhere, yeah, I feel like they're just platonic, or the girls aren't taking me seriously, or I'm too nervous to escalate. And so you might have those thoughts as well, but at least just sort of take a moment to appreciate the fact that you got that far, and then keep on going. But of course, at the same time, you can't be lazy. You have to, you know, take stock of where you're at and what your weak points might be, which again is the reason why it's just so much easier to make progress when you actually have somebody supporting you, because if you don't have that, then you basically have to self-audit. And self-auditing it's possible, but it's a lot harder, right? Because you can only focus on so many things at once. Yeah, that's just like I guess a word of advice for anybody who's genuinely trying to build this by themselves, because that's essentially what kept me going, right? I tried to not think too many steps ahead. I tried to focus on the fundamentals, and that kept me going long enough to see some more progress, especially when I had those like 3-month ruts. I had that 3-month rut where I did not get any dates, the numbers were flaking, and I was really starting to question myself, right? The self-belief was crumbling. It was crumbling. Thankfully, I kept myself going, and I didn't allow that to completely derail me. And then I think just at the right time, I reached out for sort of help, and that was a big turning point, because then now you get somebody else who believes in you more than you believe in yourself. And I think that's a really powerful like thing to have next to you, like somebody who can see the potential in you even though you can't see it in yourself. Because, you know, when I was with Efrem, you know, Efrem would always push me into approaches that I genuinely like couldn't see myself, let's say, yielding any results. And he would always push and be like, come on, like, give yourself a chance, like, go. Right? And so sometimes we need that push, right? That's why having a brotherhood, having a community, having friends who support you, it can go a long way, yeah? Because we can do stuff on our own, but we're not lone wolves, man. Like, the idea of a lone wolf is a broken concept. Yeah, we exist in tribes, in communities, and especially guys, like, we need to have each other to lean on and get advice from and get feedback from and get criticism from, but also get positive feedback from, right? Like, it meant a lot to me when I was out in Belgrade and I would do difficult approaches, and then like Efrem would come to me and like give me a big bear hug and be like, bro, like fucking well done, like that was fucking sick. Like that's just as important as somebody putting their arm around your shoulder and saying, hey man, that blowout was brutal, but you'll be okay, like let's just keep going. And similarly, having somebody push you into those really difficult approaches where you don't believe that you can get her attention, or you don't believe that she'll like you, but somebody else does, and then you give yourself a shot, and then one day, I guarantee you, one day you will get that result that you want, and you'll be surprised, right? I mean, that happened to me in London, and the fact that it happened to me in London is what eventually led me to believe that I could do the same thing here by myself, even though I didn't have Efrem by my side, and that's essentially what led to that finish girl day. So I'm like living proof, right? Like, you can just go back to my first video on my channel about my experience of doing about 800 approaches, especially when I learned it solo. Like, you'll see the progress, right? You'll see the moments where that self-belief was, dude, it was crumbling, right? It was a bit shaky, but thankfully I just kept going. But yeah, look, I'll finish on this note, right? So when it comes to cold approach, again, like I said, it's very difficult to predict how long it will take you to get the results you want, because everybody has a different starting point. And if you don't allow yourself time to develop, then it will be a very psychologically torturous experience. You will not enjoy it, because you'll always be beating yourself up, you'll always be frustrated, and you'll always, you will essentially just destroy your self-belief over time, right? It will not be sustainable. And so you have two options at that point, right? You either decide to just trust in the process and keep on going, or you just remove the desire to get good entirely and you stop. But the reality is that option 2 doesn't really work, right? You can't just remove the desire, because we're talking about dating, we're talking about mating, we're talking about establishing these romantic connections. This is a very important part of life. So to wake up one day and go, you know what, I'm gonna throw the towel in and just not care about my dating life. Sure, you can do that for some time, but eventually you'll be like, nah, I actually need to like sort this out. This is becoming a problem, right? And the later you leave it, the worse it is, right? Because now you're losing time. So I don't think it's possible to get rid of the desire, and so as a result, as guys, we always want to make progress, and I think you have to actually get to a point where you can prove it to yourself. And it's a shame, because I wish we lived in a world where you didn't need that validation from the girls, right? Like, I wish you could just wake up and be like, yeah, I don't need female validation, I don't need these girls to like me, I'm good, like I can live on my ones, and I can live on an island by myself with my boys and never have any female attention, or never get dates, or never get laid, or never have those experiences that I always wanted when I was a young boy or whatever. You could say that, but I don't think that's sustainable, and I think you'd be lying to yourself. Again, I can't speak for everybody, but if you're somebody who's watching this kind of content, then bro, chances are you're in this for a reason. You want to prove it to yourself that you can get that kind of girl. And it's kind of, you could argue that, oh, you're objectifying women because you're looking at them as like these trophies of, success, and you're trying to like level up the caliber of girl you want, but that's just life, man. So if you find an issue with it, then whatever, I don't care. But I just think that's how most guys think, right? Most guys want to get with the hottest chick on the strip, right? And yeah, part of it is because we want to fulfill our ego, but I would say for people like me and other people who've had the strings of rejection that I've experienced since high school, I think we owe it to ourselves to make that progress, right? And I think that's that can make it fun, because now you're treating it like a game. And now you're like, okay, I'm starting at like this level, and now with every single hurdle that I get over, with every new level that I unlock, meaning caliber of girl, then now I'm like building that self-esteem, building that self-belief, bit by bit. And by the end of that, you become this absolute weapon, yeah? Become this like savage. And it's crazy because I feel like that now, yeah? But a year ago, I don't think I really understood what that would feel like, but now I actually know what it feels like, right? What it feels like is when I'm walking around here and I see a girl, I'm like, I'm less likely to count myself out. I literally just go in and I'm like, all right, I've got this. Just, you know, this is like any other day. This is like any other girl. You know, I think to myself, oh, I've been with a girl who's that attractive. Like, why wouldn't this girl find me attractive, right? Oh, I've had a good conversation with that girl before, so why wouldn't this one go any different, right? So I think just having that like self-belief through action is what gets you that confidence. But yeah, treat it like a game. Yeah, treat it like an infinite game, because that's what it is. You know, you're essentially just out here trying to collect XP points for all my gaming nerds out there. And you know, sometimes you lose a couple of lives and you regress, but other times you make a lot of progress, right? But just try and find the fun in it is, I guess, the best way to look at it. But anyway, I think that's it. I think I'm kind of going in circles when it comes to the talking points, so I will leave it there. It's about 6:34. I'm going out tonight with Kristian, which is crazy because Kristian is the first person who really gave me enough belief to try cold approach. You know, I'd already started it before I came across his channel, thanks to Social Animal by Ruben. But Kristian just gave me a blueprint. Yeah, Kristian gave me direction through his content to steer me in the right path, and that just gave me a lot more leeway and flexibility to allow myself to fail and to give myself grace. So to now be in Bangkok and to be able to go out with him and, you know, get a drink and just chill for a bit is it's pretty surreal. It's kind of like a full circle moment. I remember watching his videos when I was taking a shit and just sat on the toilet seat, you know, just watching it with my AirPods in and like just absorbing all the knowledge and being like, yeah, like this is what I'm talking about. Like this is what I've been trying to articulate to myself for so long when it comes to understanding how deep this game is, right? How deep a cold approach is for the right person, for the right people. And so I always talk about how cold approach changed my life, and it continues to change my life in so many ways. I mean, I'll have to make a whole video about it, to be honest, but it continues to change my life. And so to be able to hang out with the guy that really kickstarted that process is pretty special. So anyway, that's it from me. I'm gonna try and get a Uber back to my place so that I can do a bit more work, do a bit more editing, and then go for the night out. But otherwise, I hope that was useful for you boys, and I will see you in the next one. Peace out.
Yo, shout out Ian's Room.
Let's
Ian's
go.
Room on YouTube.
Hey.
This is the channel. 5 years from now, it's gonna be blowing up. Right now.
Hey, you heard it here first, yeah? The OG. Spud me. Let's go.
Oh, yo, this guy is creating content right now for generations to come. So, if you're not subscribed, you're missing out. You're missing out on the revolution. Subscribe to Ian's Room on YouTube, because this is where it's going to be at. Coached by Efrem.
Seal of approval. You heard it here first, boys. That's all I gotta say.